Daniel Adongo, the Kenyan rugby convert who became the first Kenyan to appear in the National Football League, has been deported from the United States. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says the former Indianapolis Colts linebacker was removed to Kenya on June 20, 2026, after a Department of Justice immigration judge ordered his removal on March 23. The agency says Adongo had remained in the country after overstaying his visa beginning in 2016. But the announcement now raises a much larger question. How did one of professional football's most unusual international success stories end with immigration detention and removal more than a decade later? For verified entertainment updates without the rumors, subscribe to Startline Entertainment. The newest confirmed development is not an arrest or a pending hearing. The removal has already taken place. ICE Chicago said the March order was carried out on June 20th, although the agency did not publicly announce the case until late July. That delay explains why Adongo's name has suddenly returned to the headlines, even though he had already been sent to Kenya several weeks earlier. People reported that he had been held at the Miami Correctional Facility in Indiana before his removal. ICE's account identifies two central parts of the case. The first is immigration status. According to the agency, Adongo overstayed his visa in 2016, approximately 1 year after his NFL career ended. The second is his criminal record. ICE cited a series of arrests in Indiana and a confirmed 2020 conviction for criminal mischief involving property damage. Officials said that conviction resulted in a 364-day jail sentence. Public reports sometimes round that sentence up to 1 year, but 364 days is the more precise figure given in the agency-based coverage. The agency also listed previous arrests associated with allegations including felony intimidation, battery, and disorderly conduct. That wording matters. An arrest is not the same as a conviction, and the public ICE statement, as reported by Kenyan and American outlets, did not say that every listed arrest resulted in a guilty finding. Citizen Digital reported that some of the charges were later dismissed, while the Star noted that ICE did not disclose whether the other arrests produced additional convictions. The clearest publicly confirmed conviction in the current announcement is the 2020 criminal mischief case. ICE Chicago Assistant Field Office Director Douglas Thompson described Adongo as a community threat and said former professional status did not exempt anyone from immigration enforcement. That is the agency's characterization of the case, not an independent judicial finding quoted in the available reports. Adongo was not reached for comment by Fox News, and people said it had contacted the Indianapolis Colts. As of the latest reports reviewed, neither Adongo nor the team had issued a substantive public response to the removal announcement. To understand why this case is attracting international attention, it is necessary to return to 2013. Adongo arrived in Indianapolis with a background almost unheard of in the NFL. He had played rugby in South Africa and New Zealand, including time with the Southern Kings, the University of Pretoria's rugby program, the Blue Bulls, and Counties Manukau. He had never played organized American football before the Colts contacted him about attempting the transition to outside linebacker. The Colts' own account from July 2013 described how quickly the opportunity developed. Adongo was in South Africa when the team reached out. Within weeks he had signed, traveled to the United States for the first time, and reported to training camp in Anderson, Indiana. At roughly 6'5" and more than 250 pounds, he was viewed as a developmental prospect whose size, speed, and rugby experience might translate into pass rushing ability. He began the 2013 season on Indianapolis practice squad. In December, the Colts promoted him to the 53-man roster, making him eligible for regular season action. That promotion completed a remarkable transformation. A player with no previous football background had reached the active roster only months after arriving in America. NFL and Colts records show that he appeared in 2 games during that first season. His development was then slowed by injuries. A biceps injury during the 2014 preseason ended that season before he could build on his initial appearances. In November 2015, Indianapolis elevated him to the active roster again. He played in 3 more games, bringing his career total to 5 NFL appearances. His role was limited, with much of his work coming on special teams rather than as a regular defensive starter. The next turn came in December 2015. Police were called to the residence Adongo shared with a woman after a friend received messages indicating that the woman might need help. Adongo was not at the house when officers arrived. NBC Sports reported that the woman said she did not need assistance and could not explain the message. Sports Illustrated reported that police had examined two possible domestic incidents during that period, but that prosecutors did not file charges against Adongo in either matter. The Colts waived him on December 17, 2015. The timing connected the roster move publicly with the police reports, but the team did not announce a detailed legal conclusion, and it is important not to describe the 2015 reports as convictions. ESPN's transaction record confirms the date of the waiver, while the contemporary reports confirm that no charges were filed in those incidents. That distinction becomes critical when following the rest of the timeline. Adongo's NFL career ended in 2015. ICE says his visa overstay began the following year. From that point forward, his immigration status and his later encounters with Indiana law enforcement became separate but eventually intersecting issues. The current public record does not establish that the 2015 police calls themselves caused his 2026 removal. The removal was based on the immigration judge's order, the agency's description of his visa overstay, and the record ICE presented in its announcement. People, citing reporting from the Indianapolis Star, also included sensitive personal context. The outlet said members of Adongo's family have described him as experiencing mental health difficulties and have expressed their own belief that those problems were connected to his years in professional sports. It also reported that a judge found him legally incompetent following an examination in 2017 and that he spent time in a psychiatric facility. Those details should not be turned into a medical diagnosis or used to claim that football or rugby caused his later legal problems. The causal connection is a family belief reported by the press, not an independently established medical conclusion. The major confirmed criminal development came in 2020, when Adongo was convicted of criminal mischief involving property damage and sentenced to 364 days. ICE relied on that conviction, along with its account of his other arrests, when presenting the removal as part of the agency's criminal enforcement priorities. But once again, the reporting does not provide a complete docket for every incident attributed to him over the past decade. Any video covering this story should therefore separate the single clearly identified conviction from the broader list of allegations and arrests. The agency also said Adongo became subject to detention under the Laken-Riley Act. That federal law took effect on January 29, 2025. The final enacted text directs immigration authorities to take custody of certain non-citizens who meet specified immigration conditions and who have been arrested for, charged with, convicted of, or admitted conduct involving categories that include burglary, theft, larceny, shoplifting, assault of a law enforcement officer, or a crime causing death or serious bodily injury. A conviction is therefore not required in every situation covered by the statute. What remains unclear is exactly which event in Adongo's record ICE used to place him within those statutory categories. The accessible agency-based reports say the Laken-Riley Act applied, but they do not identify the precise arrest, charge, or underlying conduct that triggered mandatory detention in his particular case. That missing detail matters because several summaries have described the law too broadly as applying to any undocumented person with a criminal record. The actual statute names particular legal and offense categories. By early 2026, Adongo was reportedly in state custody at the Miami Correctional Facility, while ICE pursued the immigration case. On March 23, a Department of Justice immigration judge ordered him removed. Approximately 3 months later, on June 20th, ICE carried out that order and returned him to Kenya. Publicly available reporting does not disclose whether he pursued an appeal before removal, whether any application for relief was considered, or what legal representation he had during the proceedings. The timing is also important. This was not a sudden decision made after the July headlines appeared. The judge's decision was issued in March, the removal happened in June, and the public announcement arrived in late July. In other words, viewers are learning about the end of the process after the most consequential step had already occurred. For Kenya, Adongo's return carries particular significance because his NFL arrival was celebrated as a national sporting first. Before him, no Kenyan had completed the same path into an NFL regular season game. His career was brief, but the achievement was real. 5 appearances after entering the sport with no previous American football experience. Kenyan outlets covering the deportation have emphasized that contrast between the promise surrounding his 2013 breakthrough and the circumstances of his 2026 return. The start line takeaway is this: Daniel Adongo's deportation should not be reduced to a single dramatic headline. The verified timeline shows several separate developments. A historic sports transition, a short and injury-affected NFL career, a 2015 release following police scrutiny that did not produce charges, a visa overstay beginning in 2016, later legal problems including one clearly confirmed conviction, immigration detention, a March 2026 removal order, and the June execution of that order. It is equally important not to combine every arrest into one larger claim of guilt. The public reporting distinguishes between allegations, arrests, dismissed or unresolved charges, and the 2020 conviction. It is also inappropriate to use his family's statements about mental health to diagnose him. Explain every event or claim that contact sports caused his conduct. Those questions are not resolved by the available record. As of now, the clearest verified status is that Daniel Adongo has been removed from the United States and returned to Kenya. No substantive post-removal statement from Adongo, his representatives, or the Colts was located in the reports reviewed. What happens next, whether he addresses the case publicly, reconnects with Kenya's sporting community, or challenges any part of the public account, remains unknown. And that is now the final open question in a story that began as one of the NFL's most unlikely international journeys and has ended, at least for the moment, far from Indianapolis.